Oh, here's a disclaimer. This episode starts so slow. Stick with it, maybe.
Welcome, one and all. Plant your little booties on your booty chair. I've handed over the introduction to you, Rye.
Nice cue. Little throat goblin. I might keep
Nice,
this.
cute
I
little
might keep
throat
this
goblin.
as our worst intro yet.
We need to keep on setting new records for how badly we're doing.
Welcome to Coprolalia. This is a podcast, and boy, oh boy, do we record it most weeks. It's me, Rye, and there's Giles. We're a couple of arts boys, and we record this every week, and I've already did that bit. Giles, how are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Yeah. How do you feel? How are you?
I am overall quite good.
Nice.
If this is anyone's first episode, this is the worst sell for a podcast.
We're usually very depressed.
Speak.
Oh, you're gonna make me feel alone in my depression.
I refuse to offer support in any way.
Yeah, that's fair. That's what they all do.
What's I haven't got anything. I'm just not.
I'll give it a shot. Here we go. So, I'm really hungover because I had a big old night of drinking with a couple friends.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it. In fact, have you ever had those nights where you finally get to just like rag on everyone that you're mad at in your life?
Don't know. I don't get mad.
Bullshit.
No. Usually I just hang out.
You're
with
bullshitting me.
I hang out with
now.
with my coworkers, and we rat on or rag on customers.
Well, yeah. It's like that. It is like that.
But for people you're emotionally invested with.
People who trust you. No. The particular friend whose house it was. He's always been this guy who just loves, I don't know, pointing out flaws in other people, but
yeah, right.
But instead of it making me feel like, oh man, this guy's got a whole lot of anger, it's like almost like a stand-up bit. It feels very much like stand-up, and I end up just in laughing fits as he's just mocking everybody. It's like roasting. That's it. It was like a roast.
There is a way to do it that's not emotionally devastating for everyone involved.
Oh yeah, no, it was not emotionally devastating for anybody. That's the thing. It's like everyone only benefited from feeling a little catharsis from just how serious everything can be. So yeah, that was a lot of fun, but I am hungover, and that's why this podcast has been mostly dead air today.
Well, that's really fine, because our listener, people who tune in, the people who listen to this, numbers in the three. You can count them in.
We had one. I honestly think I was the one view that our last podcast got.
Well,
I'm pretty sure I listened to it and that was the one view.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the fact that we've been recording a podcast together. for a year, over a year now. We missed a couple episodes, so we haven't actually hit episode 52 yet. This is episode 51. Episode 52 is coming up next week, and boy, oh boy, tune in for that one, because
we got so many things planned for that one. We haven't discussed it yet, but
we've got Paul McCartney's.
Oh yeah, he said yes to it, didn't he?
Yeah, he's coming on. He's not doing anything.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write him down because I want to talk about him. Because Jesus fucking Christ.
John Lennon didn't reply.
This is great. This is an amalgamation. Is that the word I'm looking for? An amalgamation.
An amalgamation.
Yeah, an amalgamation. An amalgamation of every misstep we've ever taken in recording a podcast, compiled into one so far.
And that's a year's worth of progress too.
That's quite a feat. Recording a podcast for a year, and this is where we're at with it. I think I'm just gonna have a little look here. We're at minute 7. Coprolalia, unedited, what is it? What's our tagline? I can't even remember our tagline. I was going to put our tagline too late in the podcast to be part of the intro, but I can't even fucking remember the tagline.
Sorry. Unrequested is one of the uns. Always remember the 3 uns. Coprolalia.
Maybe this is what Coprolalia has always wanted to be.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be shit talking, but then shit talking is usually still have some sort of content involved with it. Yeah, no, I like the idea though that we continue to record this with exactly 0 people listening. No, it's not 0. We have like maybe 3 listeners, and they don't always tune in. It's gonna be a fun look back on our lives in 10 years.
Oh yeah. Also, if at some point in the future this podcast just blows up and you're listening to this at the 100,000 views mark, then you get to laugh at how pathetic we thought we were at this point in our lives.
Wait, this episode is going to get 100,000 views in the future?
In like 10 years' time.
Okay, over the course of 10 years.
Yeah, we'll be added to a cringe compilation.
True.
So there'll be like a cringe channel where it's just podcasts that are cringe.
Is it worth putting out content that's bad?
I don't know. Why don't you ask Nicki Minaj?
Come on. You could have picked anyone.
No, I couldn't. Only Nicki Minaj came to my brain and I couldn't force her out. I don't actually hate Nicki Minaj. That was just a joke.
I guess this is more of a question of, do you put out anti-content? This could potentially turn away listeners.
This podcast?
This episode.
Oh. Okay. I'm not going to apologize.
So I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on in terms of the flow. I just can't think of anything to fucking talk about. I can't string sentences together to form sentences. Wait, to form paragraphs. So I've been recording a rap EP.
Yeah, nice.
Which you've now heard. The reason I'm bringing it up is because I've been watching a lot of videos on all kinds of videos about music production and songwriting and stuff like that. The songwriting ones have been particularly interesting, and there was one video that he talked about giving advice to young up and coming songwriters and just young up and coming artists in general. And when he was in school studying songwriting to be a professional songwriter, because now he writes for ridiculously huge names. I can't remember what names. I think it was like Justin Timberlake and stuff like that. He writes for massive people. But he was saying that when he was younger, he would give feedback with the effort to try and make people better, to try and help people correct their mistakes early on, just as he hoped people would do for him. Yeah. But he found that he was overly critical, or at least like he was brutally honest. And he thought at the time that like that was really good because everyone is going to suck at the start. So it's good to try and make as many mistakes and trying to figure out what's not working really, really early on. Which I get the logic there, and I've done it before, and I've met lots of people who have done it to me as well.
Yeah.
But he made the point, though, that basically that makes sense logically, but it's the worst thing you can do for an up-and-coming artist at the very start, before they even released anything, while they're working, while they're trying to get stuff going, because the hardest part to get right in any of this is to find the confidence to actually follow through with your ideas. And to actually have a good idea is not uncommon. I think lots of people have good ideas. I think that's really actually one of the easiest parts of of being a creative. But learning how to execute that idea, or learning how to take that good idea and make it a fantastic idea, or make it an exciting idea and present it in a way that actually works, is the hard part. And it's just really easy, that first part, to kill people's confidence, and then they can't turn those good ideas into great ideas.
Have you seen Whiplash?
Yes. I was watching a clip of it yesterday of the bit when he's playing in the band and he's like, "No, you're not at my tempo." So he keeps clapping him in, and he starts playing the drums, and he's like, "No, stop, you're not at my tempo yet." But they replaced the drum player kid with Clefairy, I think, playing a keyboard. And it's fucked hilarious.
That sounds funny.
I'll try and find it and put it in the description below.
Yeah, nice. See, this is what I like. Directing our listeners towards funny content that's relevant.
I don't know how to spell Clefairy, anyway.
Clefairy, Clefairy.
Anyway,
I've played
I'll try and find it. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah. So the reason I brought up Whiplash is it's the Charlie Parker myth. Like getting out there, being like almost completely rejected, and even like having one of the band members that you play with so mad at you failing that they throw a cymbal at your head.
Yeah.
Which doesn't give you brain damage, of course. But it does give you a very bad heroin addiction.
This is... I don't want to take it here. I don't necessarily want to take... if I want to take it in this direction. But I think this is a big part of why... no. Nah, never mind. I'm not going to...
So anyway, there are some people who actually thrive through that adversity.
Yeah.
So I think you're right that you don't do it early on. When someone's just trying something out, don't become an authority that just says, "Look, sorry kid, you're never going to make it." Like Sonic the Hedgehog, like, "Sorry, you're too slow." The kids relate to the Sonic the Hedgehog character, so I like to use him in examples. How are you ever going to actually get better if you already think that you've just got some sort of like in the Gorillaz song.
Which one?
You know that line in the Gorillaz song.
We're gonna need a little more. Need a little more.
Rhythm, you have it or you don't. That's a fallacy.
Yep.
A fallacy is just like something that is an untrue fact, like statement.
Yeah.
So rhythm, having it or you don't, is like a thing that people say, but it is indeed a fallacy.
Yeah. That's super common. Or people say, "Oh, I'm not creative. I don't have a musical bone in my body." That's absolutely.
Some people are sort of tone deaf, I must admit.
That's a different thing, though. People can be tone deaf and they can be taught. That people can be tone deaf and that can actually be a diagnosed kind of thing. There's a way the brain's wired. People who are just shit singers, you can learn, but I don't know. My brother's teaching now, and he's talked about that. With how some kids just seem to have no sense of tone or rhythm, and it's really bizarre and shocking. However, I think that comes from as well, just like in our culture, I don't know, I can't speak about on other parts of the world, but at least in Western culture, like for a lot of it does seem that kids are kind of devoid of music, as in it's not like it appears on television or in their kids shows and stuff like that, but it's not really part of, like, when you go to gatherings, people aren't playing music, people aren't jamming on instruments and stuff like that, and I think that has a big effect on a lot of people. It happens in certain parts, and it happened for me. I was surrounded by music constantly. I think that pushed me to be more musical. But I've met so many kids who never had any of that, and so they don't have that innate sense of rhythm or tone or anything like that. But it can be taught again. You can find that within yourself.
Yep. So we have a friend who's, I guess there was music in their household.
Yep.
However, none of their family at all is musical.
Mm-hmm.
And they still developed their own musical, I guess, like, taste and like sort of instrumental ability, regardless of that.
Yeah.
You and I both have musical parents or parent.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so, like, it's almost like it's just falling in line for us to get better at whatever.
Yeah.
At playing, at composing. But for some people, they go against just the general interests of their family to pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways that makes them more tenacious or more motivated even.
To find that drive within yourself early on is quite remarkable.
Yeah. Because you would be put off fairly consistently.
Yeah, for sure. But that's like a really popular. I don't know. I get why it's like a rags to riches kind of thing. Like, people love the struggling artist story, like someone who they had to. People like, actually, hip hop's a really good example, because people even now they love the idea that, like, they like to think back to it when it was originally a rags to riches stories, because hip hop kind of came out of the fact that there weren't any instruments in black schools, and they didn't have access to things like that. So they turned to the one thing that had that they could still make music on, which was a turntable, and that's kind of how turntables became an instrument.
Wow.
That's a really TDLR? No, TLDR version of that story, but that's a part of the history of hip hop. But people still kind of have that mentality that, like, oh, what, you didn't struggle to do this, like, that somehow discredits art a lot of the time. People love it. People are quicker to jump on board if the artist had to struggle to even get heard.
Yeah.
Which I get the story. It's exciting.
Well, that works two ways. It works two ways. So there is a level where the audience is perceiving them to be a strong character who has overcome adversity, and there's a respect there. However, there is also a chance that person has weathered and evolved more than, say, someone who was given instruments for free, recorded with free studio time. Always had people saying, yeah, you can do this, and oh, I really like this, you don't need to change it at all. There is definitely a correlation between the quality and the impact of someone who's weathered far more adversity than someone else. It just seems to be so.
I guess I wonder if it's like the idea that if you have an idea in your head and it's constantly being challenged, but it still holds up in your own mind, then you know that it's a good one. That you you can believe in it more. So like if. So let's take someone who, if you were to have someone who came from immense privilege and had everything given to them and had no one say no, then every idea in their head hasn't been challenged, and so they don't actually know if it withstands scrutiny.
Yeah,
that's a hypothetical. I'm not talking about anyone in particular or any artist or anything like that. That's actually, the point of this podcast for me is to just spout bullshit and to have these discussions. So any thoughts that I have get put under the microscope from both of us. And then if it still survives, if my idea still holds up, then I know it's worth something at least. And then it's worth pursuing a little further.
Yeah, cool.
And I think that's true in terms of that, rags to riches story in music or art in general.
I feel like we should introduce the listeners to why that they're hearing office noises in the background.
Yeah, we didn't do that.
Yeah.
Up to you.
They've been checking their phone at like every 30 seconds, thinking that there's a phone call. No doubt.
Yeah.
So as I'm talking to the listener now, but I will say things like you, but I don't mean you, right?
I understand how... Go on.
So as you, the listener, would already know by now, we travel through the universe and through different dimensions using a little coin-operated cube that also has a synthesizer, is that?
Yeah.
And it actually got stolen by this fat, chubby man who operates a call center, and we need to get it back because we're actually just 1 year behind the present day, and we want to get back. We need to go forward a year because it's 2017, and I hate it. I'm ready to go back to 2018. How do you feel, Rye?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good returning.
Yeah. Have there been any days in the any years in the 2010s so far that were better than others?
I don't know.
Okay.
What year did Pimp a Butterfly come out? That was a pretty good year.
I think it was 16?
16. 2016 was a good year.
Yeah. I hated 2016.
Did you? Why is that?
Well, for one, I started getting chronic migraines.
That's a bloody good reason.
And I was living in Melbourne, the capital city of the state that we both live in.
Yeah.
And doing a lot of drinking and eating really poorly.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I didn't like 2016, but that's okay. To each their own. So yeah, we've infiltrated this call center. We're going to get our cube back, our transport cube thing. I sure hope none of these phones ring, and then we actually have to talk to somebody.
That would be a struggle. I believe I read the introduction manual when we got the job, and it's just it's a weird call center though. They just kind of take any call, like they're an outsourced kind of thing. So like small tech companies who don't have enough money to hire full tech support will outsource it to us.
Oh, nice.
So every
that
item
sounds like a recipe for very good customer service.
So it could be anything when we get that call. Could be any item. That's the fun of this particular job that we are working. Theater.
Theater.
Anyway. So, here's a... to carry on from our last topic.
Yeah.
Which I don't really fully remember what we were talking about.
We're talking about being confident, overcoming adversity, and working in a call center.
Okay, so the reason I brought up the whole recording an EP thing before, and we've talked about it with this podcast as well, because we don't really promote this podcast, ever. Never have, and that's why we're still at so few listeners. That could also be arguably the quality of the podcast, but I've heard worse. I've encountered bad content online that does well for itself, so...
yeah, me too.
But the reason we haven't really promoted it is we're just totally... I at least have not been confident in this podcast. I've been always confident where it's headed, and I think that's the same with my music. I've always been confident where it's headed, same with my cartoons, always confident where it's headed, what I potentially could do, but I struggle to promote it because I'm always like, I'm not sure if it's ready, I'm not sure if it's good enough.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very... I'm sure every artist has that. Maybe that's not true. I've certainly seen some artists on online, especially in things like hip-hop, where they just promote as if they're a fucking rap god when they've got their first EP out or whatever, and I don't fully understand it.
Yeah, it's a culture of egotism, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's just America in general. That's not a new observation at all.
No.
I think Australia is actually quite the opposite in a way. I think we often confuse... I think we've talked about this before, but I think we often confuse confidence with ego in Australia. Where if you seem at all proud or confident in your work, people will often just think you're being egotistical or a bit arrogant. Yeah. Which
I've always been quite opposed to arrogance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's good. I think Australians kind of demand a certain level of honesty with their art and stuff like that.
Modesty.
Modesty, yeah. But I think that can also hinder people to a degree. I think it especially at the start, it's really hard to be able to have to wait until you actually feel confident enough, till you're ready to put your stuff out. I don't think that confidence is necessarily going to come until you do put it out, until you start pushing yourself forward and releasing something and move on to the next project. And I wonder if perhaps audiences are better at seeing potential than people give them credit for.
Oh yeah.
So you like if you send some music to a producer friend or something like that, someone who works in the industry or someone who spends their time doing the same thing, right? They'll usually go like, okay, cool. So here's the technical issues with this track, and here the bass is too loud, or the bass isn't pumping enough, and stuff like this, right? They'll point out these flaws, and those are really good because you do want to work on those. You want to perfect your technical skills as much as possible. However, I think audiences aren't listening that intently. And what they are listening for is honesty and integrity and potential. And more often than not, they'll hear an energy that they like, and they'll latch onto that and think that this is going to go somewhere.
An energy.
An energy.
Oh. Sorry to mock your diction.
It's quite alright. I think I definitely mumbled it. Like jump on the SoundCloud and you fucking... there's all kinds of poorly recorded, muffled versions of songs that still get a good reception, because I think people can just hear that there's something there that's going to work, and if we support it now, it's going to go somewhere.
Well, I think one of the more fascinating things about production is that people will try and imitate poor production styles.
Yeah.
Because either of the warmth of maybe back when you recorded to vinyl, it just had this warm, burning sound.
Yeah.
Just things like that. And I've realized that I actually respond way better to things that don't sound like they've been polished to a fine sheen that I can see my own face in. It's sort of like well, I just go look into a mirror. If I just combined a sound metaphor with a visual metaphor, it's very confusing. But
every time I listen to a DJ Khaled song, I just feel like I could just look at a fucking mirror.
Yeah. Because you look like DJ Khaled.
It's uncanny.
That's me.
Why is it Mario?
No, I had something I was going towards.
People emulating like dirt and
Yeah. Okay. So, last night, like I was saying with the drinking.
Yeah.
There was this really shitty old radio that my friend had plugged his old iPod Classic into.
Yeah.
And the speakers were so distorted and fucked up.
Yeah.
That all the songs he was playing, which were like punk songs.
Yeah.
Very like raw, punky songs. They were also just fucking distorted and it was perfect.
Yeah.
Somehow I was like, this is the aesthetic that you want to go to an underground bar or something to hear a live punk band play through cheap amplifiers that have got the cones cut on them or something.
Yeah.
It felt so, the aesthetic of it was so perfect, is what I'm saying.
I remember when we studied music industry back in high school, our music industry teacher mentioned this type of cycle that the music industry goes through, which has stuck with me ever since he mentioned it. When things often start, things start kind of rough, and they get more and more produced as the I guess as the scope kind of grows. Like people get ambitious, people want to refine every aspect of the sound and make it perfect and get it to this higher level. It gets to a point when it kind of flips over though, and everyone's just sick to fucking death of this overproduced sound, and they want something to sound more natural. They want that grit, that rough side that feels more human. I think that's the main thing. Is same with people seeing potential, and I've mentioned before that people who don't know shit about music can hear honesty amazingly well. So even if you're a perfect singer versus a real rough as guts singer, but the rough as guts one sings with so much more energy and vibrance and actual emotion, people will pick up on that and will gravitate towards that a lot more than the perfect singer. And I think that's that flip side, going for that rougher sound, that it's trying to find something human as much as possible. I think people love people.
One thing that I've sort of been thinking about is the fact that AI is like completely on the rise.
Yep.
And eventually we're not going to be looking for the things that people can do that sound robotic. We'll be looking for the actual human side of music production and music performance and composition. We'll know there's going to be a point where so there is already music that is created by AIs and even sung and performed by computers.
Yep.
Over in Japan, I think, or Korea, this is already happening.
Yeah, there's a few experiments I've seen on Bandcamp that have surfaced up, coming out of universities and things like that. People experimenting with different technologies.
There will be the flip side of that where
Mm-hmm.
it's like people start rejecting AI produced music or AI composed music.
Yeah.
It'll be very cool that there'll be some sort of AI that just makes minimal industrial, I don't know, some sort of really interesting freaky music that's
Mm-hmm.
even surreal to listen to.
Yeah.
That'll be very cool, but we will actually want to connect with another human being through the music that we listen to. So we will have some sort of flip side where we start looking for just a person with their actual voice
Yeah.
and singing a personal story, something that's
Mm-hmm.
happened to them. Yeah,
I think this is
that'll.
well, two things to add to that. One, I think the really exciting part with AI produced music and stuff like that is adding to the human production. So basically, like if someone, so for example, if I'm in my bedroom trying to make a song, and I need strings. And to actually play the strings on a keyboard is really weird, and you can kind of tell when it's played on a keyboard because it's hard to get that same movement that you would get with a bow. But then you can kind of program and say to the computer, okay, cool, I need a string section that has this kind of vibe. You just click a couple of buttons. We're in this key, we're at this tempo, and I need this vibe following this kind of melody, and then the AI can kind of play the violin for you. I think like that kind of shit could be really interesting. And I'm very excited for that kind of thing. Also, AI-driven production in terms of like, maybe the AI can do a basic mix for you, and then you can kind of.
Well, yeah, that already exists.
Yeah. So I want like a more hands-on approach to that. Like rather than just uploading it and it sends you back a mixed track, like you can then go in and tweak certain elements. So it does like a basic mix and handles some of the technical side of it, and then you can kind of add a more human element to it. So things like that I'm pretty excited for. But anyway, I was going to say though, with I think a really good example of this flip side thing as well is the internet and YouTube especially is, I think we've spoken about this before, but I think that was that was why things like vlogging rose to such popularity on YouTube after the world of television, like people coming from scripted, overproduced TV, and then the internet came to rise, and anyone with a webcam could make a show and talk about themselves, and it was edited, but like they were the filter, they were the only filter, they weren't being produced, they weren't being edited by other people, it was just them. And I think that's why we gravitated towards that as a culture, because we wanted that human element again. We wanted to see real people. And now you can see it as well, where that's becoming, like, people are still seeking that out, because now they're seeing people like Jake and Logan Paul and other people like that who has such high production value and are so clearly, it's very clear that it's an act. Like, it's the whole thing is a sculpted idea, it's a produced show at this point, even though it's still in a stylized vlog kind of thing. And people are like, well, this is cool as a show, but I actually still want that rawness to it, because I want to feel like I'm interacting with a real person. That's why I love dynamic banter. Shout out to my favorite and really the only podcast I listen to, where I think there might be a little bit of editing here and there, but there's just so many parts when it's like sometimes the volumes are just kind of fucked, and it works for the comedic value, and like there's just things like that. It feels raw and unedited, and you start to feel like you know the people behind the show more closely, which I like.
Well, yeah, that is nice. Red Letter Media on YouTube.
Yeah.
They used to get a whole lot of comments.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell that I got that idea and then lost it and then got it back again and then it fell away again, and then for a long time there was a meme in the comments where another Red Letter Media video. I have friends for the next hour.
Yeah.
The joke being that these people are going to YouTube to feel like they're hanging out with friends because they're very lonely.
Yeah.
As I think a lot of people in Western society especially feel.
Yeah.
There's the internet and just the general way that people behave in Western society is incredibly non-community based.
Yeah. Though communities are, I think, forming more and more because of the internet, because it allows people to find each other where it would previously be a lot harder.
Different kind of communities though, because they're not very physical.
And they're also maybe not too diverse, and I think that might be an issue. In terms of I think there should be a shift towards communities that are more location based, that are more like people who you just are physically nearby. That gives you because then you're kind of interacting with people who you wouldn't normally interact with, and you learn from them, and you're all learning to live together, which I like.
The phone has not seemed to gone off at all. I think this is a fairly breezy job that we've got right now.
Slow day. Speak of the bloody devil, though. There we bloody go. Let's bloody pick this.
So, are you going to answer that, or am I going to answer that?
Oh, man, I don't know. Well, this is the first time I've had to actually do anything at this job, so I'm a bit nervous. Do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, right, sure.
Anytime.
Here we go. Hello?
G'day, mates. I'm bloody calling up again. Get some tech support here. I've got a problem. Can you help me?
Wait, are you the tech support or am I the tech support?
I called you, didn't I?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, how can I help you?
Man, my bloody Tamagotchi's not doing good.
Oh no. Have you been feeding and watering it?
Yes. I bought some Mr. Chow from the local store, and I've been stuck it in the pool, and the bloody thing's still hungry and thirsty.
Look, I'm not really far enough in the game to have owned a pool, so I don't really know what to do in that circumstance.
Well, see...
you've drowned... You're telling me, sir...
Yeah.
That you've drowned your Tamagotchi.
Yeah, in my pool, in the backyard.
What, in your... Oh, you've drowned... Okay, I thought
it said it was thirsty. It gave the little icon, the little water, like I need a bloody drinky. And I thought, well, I got shitloads of water, unchlorinated, because I'm a natural boy, El Natural boy, stuck in the back pool.
All right. So here, number one, you absolute idiot.
Yep.
You don't.
I'll take that. This is not my first rodeo.
You do not use real water. You do not use real water with your Tamagotchis.
Oh. But it had the icon. It had the little drippy drip, the wet icon.
Did I stutter?
No, you didn't, mate.
All right, good. I'm glad we sorted that out. Now go. Don't have any kids. Goodbye.
I didn't know they still made Tamagotchis.
They don't. That man was from 2005.
What year are we in again?
2017.
Just what else is on the menu? We talked about that. We talked about
I was thinking a little segment where you just talk about some of the stuff that you've been either reading about or stuff that you've watched over the past week. Tell you what, I've got something even better in mind.
Scratch that, bad. Go on.
Well, it is this, but it's also condensed and more focused.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, I'm already thinking and talking like someone who works in a call center, but yes, focused and direct. BoJack Horseman season 5.
Dude, I was just about to fucking say. I was like, well, I've watched BoJack Horseman recently. There we go. Let's talk about BoJack Horseman.
There we go. I have not finished season 5 yet. No. I am up to episode 11.
Oh, okay, so nearly done.
Nearly done.
All right.
So no
thoughts?
spoilers.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thoughts? I think that it's a better season than season 4.
Ooh, that's a tall order. But yeah,
I generally found like they actually like more of what was happening
Mm-hmm.
was relevant to the development of their characters rather than it felt like the first 3 or 4 seasons was like, let's just keep ruining Bojack's life and making it all his fault.
Yeah.
And this season, it actually does feel like he's now copping it. Instead of just continuously circling the drain, he's climbing back out, and he's meeting each of the mistakes he's made on each rung of that ladder that he's using to climb out of the drain that he was circling around in the first 4 seasons. Fucking hell.
I guess spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't watched any of this season. No, I'm not going to spoil the end. Just one particular episode. Right. It's like halfway through. You've already seen it. Yeah. It's been out for a little while now, right? It's been out for like a week or so.
A week is still not a lot of time for an entire season of a show.
Well, anyone who wants to watch BoJack Horseman, just turn off this episode.
Yeah.
Basically, just
sorry guys, not for you.
The episode.
You don't get to.
The episode where he gives a speech about Philbit. Is that what it's called? Philbit.
The show, yeah.
The show he's working on. Well, so yeah, the idea that the show is a reflection of BoJack Horseman, like, so he talks about how it just it's a show that enables people to kind of almost feel better about themselves being shittier people, like realizing that everyone's a bit shitty. And so that allows them to feel a bit better about themselves.
Well, yeah, and if they latch onto and identify with their self-hatred or self-loathing, then they actually make more mistakes. So, in my mind, if you're really fucking up, the goal is not to then keep making more fuck-ups.
Yeah.
The plan would be to minimize the rather than walking around swinging your arms in a windmill, but to just sort of hold your arms to your side for a little bit. That's another metaphor.
I did have this thought before this season that, like, if BoJack continues down, if the show continues down this path of just BoJack being a shitty guy and like that's the whole show. Because I don't know, I kind of identify with parts of BoJack. I can I've always been able to kind of see like that's a logical, like that's like the far end of the spectrum of where I feel like I could get to if I let certain shittier parts of my personality flourish. Flourish is a particularly bad word for that, but you know what I mean. But I feel like, for a lot of people, that it would just be enabling their own shitty behavior. So I was always hoping that BoJack would address that and kind of say that, like, cool, you actually we need to fix this though. Like, this is like, yes, people are shitty. That you need to not hate yourself at your very core for the mistakes you've made. You need to acknowledge them, come to terms with them, and then move forward and try and be better every single time. And if you continue to just kind of go around in circles, you need to look at that, and that's still a mistake. That's another mistake. You need to look at that, and there's always a way to improve and be better.
Yes, there is.
I do believe this season is kind of looking at that a bit more.
Cool. I'm very keen to finish it without any. I feel like just the fact that you've finished it means that you know something that I don't.
Maybe. Actually, no, that's true. I can take this into a different medium though, because we've spoken about it before. But that's a better way of that's a better way of describing my own distaste with certain webcomics and memes. Is this self-deprecating humor that's extremely popular? But there's a lot of it that feels lazier to me because it acknowledges the shitty behavior, but doesn't actually kind of show a way to improve it.
Rick and Morty is a little bit guilty of that.
Yeah, totally. Morty is the only saving grace, I think, a lot of the time, is that Morty can kind of show the way to deal with things and try and be a bit better, but Rick is often just self-deprecating and doesn't work to improve in any way. Which is funny for a character, and if you're just taking it at that face value, fine. But when it's such a dominant topic in our current internet humor and stuff like that, it can be a bit overbearing and teach us to not actually, I don't know, to just sit with these issues and not try and move forward. And again, I don't want people to feel guilty. That's the main thing, though. Is you need to analyze yourself and try and come to grips with things. But we all need to constantly try and be the best we can and to fix these issues if we deem them to be issues.
Yep. Yeah. I think with a lot of people who have addictions like alcoholism, they do accidentally end up identifying with that sort of constant turmoil and also just sort of make it into this thing that's unhealable, or just what I find I tend to do is ruminate. I'll think about things, a situation in which all the other people in that situation wouldn't care at all anymore about it, but I care still. And it basically inflates whatever I've been ruminating about into this really big thing. And I think some people use alcohol to try and dim ruminating, to try and dim whatever sort of traumas or whatever they don't want to think about.
Yeah.
And so it's this incredibly vicious cycle of them thinking they're helping themselves, but actually just continuing down a path of self-destruction, essentially. And that's how I feel about BoJack Horseman, anyway. He's a constant ruminator on his failures.
Yeah. I've, for a long time, identified or, idolized alcoholics.
Right.
And I don't know why. Maybe it's because my dad I wouldn't say dad was a drunk or anything like that. There was definitely alcohol present in all my life, in some way or another. And so, but I remember when I was younger, when I was I guess I was early teens, I really liked Bernard Black from Black Books as a character. And now these days I really like Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty, BoJack. I'm trying to think of some other ones. There was another one that was really prominent early on, but doesn't matter. So those kind of characters, though, I always really loved the romanticized version of the drunk. The one that's barely holding on, but is charming in the way they do it. And people often look at that person like, oh my god, they're such a mess. But then they always come through with some sort of witty observation, or they'll come through with a grand drunken gesture, but nonetheless seems to come from a real place, and everyone's like, oh fuck, this guy's such a mess, but he's got a heart of gold. But I actually went down.
I'm guilty of that path. Too. I'm guilty of perceiving or idolizing or romanticizing.
We do it all the time with artists. We'll talk about artists. A lot of people kind of grow up thinking that you do need to be on drugs to make good art. And that is still a very prominent kind of myth that exists. At the moment, there's a huge problem with Xanax in hip-hop.
Oh, man.
People...
Xanax is a particularly insidious, nasty addiction.
Yeah.
I've just for the sake of, I don't know...
Transparency?
Yeah. I have taken Xanax before.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't prescription. It was just trying it out.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, it felt like I was clearly examining my feelings.
Uh-huh.
And just had this very rational space in which to process my emotions.
Yeah, right.
And I can see why they prescribe that to people with depression.
Yeah.
To give themselves a little sort of look from the outside on their emotional state.
Yeah.
But continued use and for a lot of people, withdrawal is very very bad for their mental health. Like some people they experience psychosis and anger and I know of a person who started sort of physically attacking their family at a family outing because of a withdrawal on Xanax.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So as with any sort of medication or drug, you have to be very careful about the way that you're using it.
Yeah.
And I definitely, if anyone is trying to get into the SoundCloud rap game, don't just start slamming Xanax or purple drank or codeine. Just seriously, take it very seriously.
I understand that it's about the sense of struggle, and there are a lot of people. There's a lot of people in these scenes that are actually legitimately struggling, both with the addiction of Xanax and struggles before that, and the Xanax is an attempt to fix that problem, just as we've used alcohol to try and fix certain struggles of our own. And so I think
I don't feel very romantic, but when I'm drunk, it's like I get to or something. Yeah. Have you ever sort of left a party and you're walking through the street by yourself, you're a bit trashed, and you're just sort of getting your own walk on? Yeah. And then just striding along, just smiling. Yeah. I've had a few moments like that, and a song about being drunk and on the street comes into my head, and I just it feels like that whole situation is soundtracked and playing out like some sort of a movie.
Yeah. I think
music video maybe.
It's different for everybody, obviously, but I think for myself, when I was more into, because I still drink relatively heavily, I guess, but my attitude towards it has changed massively. Back when I was drinking more both as just a way to relax or party, but also a way as a bit of a self-medication type of thing to deal with stress and to deal with whatever I was thinking about. I think there was a part of a self-control kind of thing. I felt like, though it's obviously a slippery slope and it puts you have this image of yourself teetering on the edge, but you kind of feel like you've put yourself there, or you're controlling how much of the edge you're going off, yeah, so I felt like you'd and this is simple. These aren't maybe as heavy as Xanax or anything, but drinking in the night and drinking a lot of coffee in the morning and trying to, and you're in control of that balance, and that's how
your body is going to start feeling this eventually. By the way,
yeah, for sure. It's not. I've trying to pull back a lot.
Nice.
I don't binge nearly as much as I used to, which is really good.
I recommend Metamucil. It makes it so you don't have grog bogs.
I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
It means alcoholic shits.
Oh, right, yeah.
That just watery, greasy shit.
I'm trying to avoid that.
Fuck, it's uncomfortable.
Anyway. So yeah, that's not good though, to romanticize any of that.
Yep, and it is pretty much the staple of those cultures. It's really it's an interesting phenomenon.
And it's a staple of the culture that we've even become part of in terms of memes and online art. There's an insidious side to all of it, I think. And I might have even been part of it. I'm not saying that I'm totally not guilty of doing this either. I can actually think back to even when I was doing the IC Pigeons talk show fake talk show thing, there was always a glass of wine on the table. Like, that was part of the character.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fully realized, but that was definitely in my head. Was like, yeah, I want to make sure that there's always glasses of wine on the table. Partly because it looks kind of fancy, but also partly because I like that slightly boozy, drunken character that I get to play.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't mind that character being there as long as it's addressed. As long as you're trying to not just be relatable, but also try and help people through whatever they're going through, as well as what you're going through.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also when it comes to my usage of, I guess, archetypes of addiction or whatever, I feel like I'm actually reaching out to other people who are drinkers.
Mm-hmm.
Did you catch much of that?
No, that cut out a little bit.
Okay. So you know ContraPoints on YouTube?
Yep.
Well, when she is like slamming cocktail after cocktail during her video, I actually do feel very like, okay, I get the nightmare that she's coming from.
Yeah.
Or at least I know, yeah, there is some sort of connection I feel to her because of that. Because she is, and she's also sighing and like treating it like it's like this thing that she has to do. And I understand all of that. So, there's a chance. There's a chance she reaches more people through that. There is a chance that she alienates people, though.
I think, especially for someone who's gone through a gender transition, like the struggles perhaps far outweigh that. I don't know, like the people who are also going through that or can relate to that in any way, like that's first and foremost. You know, like that's the issue. That's the biggest issue, is that struggle, and things like alcohol, or you actually get to have a little bit of control left in your life with that. So I kind of
anyway.
Yeah, let's not go too far into that. I don't really have any like defined kind of closings on any of that topic, because that's a real all of that's a real hazy area. Because I think dealing with struggle is something that people use alcohol for, use whatever for, like, and I don't think it's necessarily healthy to just say like that's a bad thing that you're doing either. Like that's also people can. Because I still love drinking alcohol. I still love having my glasses of wine, and I do enjoy sometimes the sense of control over my own state of mind that I have with it. You know, but there's always that fine line to play, and you need to know yourself as much as you can when you're dealing with anything like that, I guess. Well,
know why you're doing it. If it's an automatic routinal process, then be aware of that.
Yeah, totally.
If I think, as with anything, any consistent usage, take breaks. Not only will you prove to yourself that you are not controlled by an addiction, but your body will actually heal a little bit, and then you may actually need to do it a little bit less.
Yeah.
Like if you stop drinking for a little while, you'd need less alcohol to reach that tipsy feeling. And for some, that's actually way more enjoyable than having to pound a whole lot and then accidentally tipping over the excess line and then becoming a drunken mess, which is a cycle I was stuck in for a little bit, binging. But yeah, take breaks. It only makes it more enjoyable, and your body has a time to heal, and you get to know how strong the addiction is on your mind.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to end it. I like that.
Cool. I wonder if it's just like a one call a day kind of a job. It's pretty breezy.
We could just keep doing this and keep getting paid.
Yeah, but we're a year behind.
True.
It's a little nauseating, don't you think?
If it's this slow in here and no one else is well, maybe the boss isn't even really paying attention. Like, if the workload's so light, maybe we can just sneak in there. He might even be asleep.
Ah.
Well, how about we bloody close this up?
Well, let's hope that no one calls us between then and now.
Oh, bloody... Oh.
Ah, man. You're going to have to answer this one.
Alright. Oh, fuck, hang on. This one's coming thick and fast. There's whole shitloads of them. Well, you answer that one, I'll answer this one. Oh, fuck.
Hello, this is the call center for,
Yeah, g'day, this is bloody right here, bloody...
how can I help you today?
Oh, really? Your electric iron's on fire.
Well,
Okay,
I don't know that much about
pretty simple
fridges, but
fix,
I'm sure I
really.
can help you out today.
What you need to do is you just
check
need to take that and throw it straight into your pool. Do you know the guy who called before? I don't know why you would call him the guy who called before, but
in the back
you go to his place,
just
throw that directly in the pool. See,
get
the
a big
great thing about
wrench.
fire is that it doesn't react well
turn
with
the
water.
turn the wrench
So you need
down
a
a
large
little bit
quantity
so
of water. Dump that
it's
straight
a
into your
bit tighter, and then
electric iron.
just
Make sure you unplug the
screwing the
electric iron
motor
because that electric iron is going to spark
and
up and
around
you could very
and
well die.
around and
I do need to
around
read a disclaimer here that we are not in any way
and
liable for
around
your death
and
or
around.